The conference room on the 14th floor of Brennan and Associates had hosted countless inheritance meetings over the years. But what happened on March 12, 2019 would become the one story that partners still whispered about long after everyone involved had left the building for the last time. I'm going to tell you about a family meeting that started with laughter and ended with silence. About assumptions that seemed obvious until a single name changed everything. And about how 37 minutes can rewrite not just an inheritance, but the entire story a family told itself about who they were. By the time the lawyer finished reading that afternoon, 3 people had left the room in tears. 1 had called their attorney, and a man in a janitor's uniform sat perfectly still in a leather chair worth more than his monthly salary, holding a folder he hadn't asked for and didn't yet understand. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back 6 weeks earlier, to the morning everything actually began, on January 28th, 2019. At approximately 6:45 in the morning, Eleanor Hartwell died in her sleep at Grandview Estate, the same house where she had lived for 52 years. She was 81 years old. The housekeeper found her in the sunroom, still in her reading chair, a book about the history of the textile industry open on her lap. The medical examiner would later confirm it was a heart attack. Sudden, painless. The kind of death people say they hope for. Eleanor Hartwell had been a formidable woman, not in the loud, commanding way, but in the quieter, more permanent sense. She had inherited Hartwell Textiles from her father in 1975, transformed it from a regional manufacturer into a national supplier, then sold the company in 2003 for $42 million. She'd invested wisely. By the time of her death, her estate was valued at just over $68 million, including the house, various properties, stocks, and a series of trust accounts that even her own children didn't fully understand. She had 3 children. Michael Hartwell, the eldest, at 56, was a corporate attorney in Boston, tall, perpetually tanned from golf weekends, married to his second wife, father of 2 children from his first marriage. He hadn't worked a full year in over a decade. His mother's money had made that possible. Catherine Hartwell Drummond, 53, lived in Connecticut with her husband, Richard, who owned a struggling private equity firm. They had 3 children, all in expensive private schools. Catherine had spent the last 20 years on charity boards, organizing galas, and managing what she called the family legacy, which mostly meant making sure the Hartwell name appeared in the right social circles. And then there was James Hartwell, the youngest at 48. James had never married. He lived in Portland, ran a small bookstore that barely broke even, and had always been the one Eleanor called when she needed someone to actually talk to, not just someone to approve her foundation's annual budget. There were also 4 grandchildren old enough to expect something, 2 ex-spouses with ongoing alimony tied to Eleanor's periodic gifts, and a nephew, Brandon Cole, whose mother had been Eleanor's sister. Brandon was 41, worked in pharmaceutical sales, and had visited Eleanor exactly twice in the last 10 years. Both times when his marriage was falling apart and he needed what he called temporary family support, which meant money. The meeting was scheduled for March 12th at 2 in the afternoon. Robert Brennan, Eleanor's attorney for 31 years, had sent formal letters to everyone named in the will. The letters were brief. They did not hint at the contents. They simply requested attendant and noted that the estate was complex and the reading would take significant time. By 1:45, the conference room was already filled with tension masquerading as small talk. Michael arrived first, with his wife, Jessica, who technically had no legal right to be there but who Michael insisted should attend anyway. Catherine came with Richard, both of them dressed like they were attending a funeral at a country club. James came alone, wearing a sweater with a small coffee stain near the collar that Catherine noticed immediately and chose not to mention, though her expression said enough. The grandchildren sat along one side of the table. Brandon Cole sat at the far end, scrolling through his phone. The 2 ex-spouses, Sandra Hartwell and Paul Drummond, Catherine's first husband, sat in chairs against the wall, present because Eleanor's gifts to them were written into the will as ongoing obligations that needed legal clarification. Robert Brennan sat at the head of the table, 73 years old, gray suit, reading glasses on a chain. He had brought 2 associates with him, both young women in their 30s, who would help manage the documentation. At 1:58, the door opened, and a man in a dark blue janitor's uniform pushed a cleaning cart into the room. His name was Vincent Perry. He was 64 years old, black, with white hair clipped, short, and hands that showed decades of manual labor. He nodded apologetically, murmured something about finishing quickly, and began emptying the trash bins along the wall. No one paid much attention at first. Michael was asking Robert about the timeline for liquefying certain assets. Catherine was whispering to Richard about whether they should contest anything that didn't align with what Eleanor had verbally promised over the years. James sat quietly, looking out the window at the city below. Vincent moved carefully, quietly. He emptied 1 bin, then another. He wiped down the side table near the door. He worked with the kind of invisibility that people in his profession learn early. The ability to be in a room without being noticed. But then he stayed. At 2:05, Robert Brennan cleared his throat and asked if everyone was present. He did a quiet count. Then he glanced at Vincent, who had finished cleaning but was now standing near the door, hands folded in front of him, waiting. Michael noticed. He frowned slightly, the way someone frowns at a fly that hasn't left the room yet. Catherine leaned toward Jessica and said, in a voice just loud enough to carry, "I think housekeeping is finished." Vincent didn't move. Robert looked down at his papers. Then he looked up at Vincent and said, very clearly, "Mr. Perry, you can take a seat wherever you're comfortable." The room went quiet in a way that felt like air being sucked out. Michael blinked. "I'm sorry." "What?" Robert repeated himself patiently. "Mr. Perry is named in the will. He's been invited to this reading." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Catherine laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh. Not yet. It was the laugh of someone who assumes there's been a misunderstanding, a clerical error. "The janitor," she said. "Mother left something to the janitor." Robert didn't smile. "Mrs. Hartwell named Mr. Perry in her will?" "Yes, he has a legal right to be present." Brandon looked up from his phone, suddenly interested. Jessica whispered something to Michael. One of the grandchildren, Emily, Michael's daughter, glanced at Vincent with visible confusion. James said nothing. He was watching Vincent's face. Vincent walked slowly to the table and sat down in an empty chair near the center, directly across from Michael. He kept his hands on the table, flat, like he was trying to take up as little space as possible. He didn't look at anyone. "This is absurd," Michael said. He wasn't angry yet, just dismissive. Mother was generous with stuff. We know that. I'm sure she left him something small. A few thousand, maybe. There's no reason he needs to sit through the entire reading. Robert removed his glasses. "Mr. Hartwell, everyone in this room has been named in your mother's will. Everyone here will remain until the reading is complete. Those are your mother's instructions, and they're legally binding as part of the document. If you'd prefer to leave, you're welcome to do so, but you'll forfeit your right to contest any portion of the will." Michael's jaw tightened. He didn't leave. Catherine stared at Vincent like he was a puzzle she was trying to solve. "I don't even know who you are," she said. It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. Vincent spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet, steady. "I worked at Grandview Estate for 26 years. Ma'am, maintenance, cleaning, groundskeeping, and my mother left you something." Catherine's tone was flat. Vincent didn't answer. He didn't know what Eleanor had left him. No one had told him. He had received the same letter everyone else had, the same instructions to appear. That was all. Robert opened the will. It was a thick document, embossed, formal. He began to read. The first section covered the standard legal language, the declarations, the executors, the structure of the estate. Robert's voice was calm, methodical. He had done this hundreds of times. Then he began the distributions. The first bequest was to James, $2 million outright, plus the contents of Eleanor's personal library, her collection of first editions, and a property in Vermont she had purchased years ago and never mentioned to anyone. James looked stunned. He had expected something, but not this. Not the books, which he knew were worth over $300,000 on their own. Catherine shifted in her seat. Richard put a hand on her arm. The second bequest was to Michael. $1.5 million, plus Eleanor's shares in a commercial property in downtown Boston, valued at approximately $900,000, plus a trust fund for his children's education. Another $700,000 to be managed by an independent trustee. Michael's face relaxed slightly. It was less than James, but it was substantial, respectable. Then Robert read Catherine's portion, $1.2 million, plus the house in Connecticut that Eleanor had bought years ago and allowed Catherine and Richard to live in, now transferred to Catherine's name. Outright, the house was worth approximately $1.8 million. Catherine exhaled. It was more than she'd expected in liquid assets. She squeezed Richard's hand. The grandchildren each received between $50,000 and $200,000, depending on their age and what Eleanor had written in her notes about their futures. Brandon Cole received $25,000 in a brief, handwritten note that Robert read aloud. For the times I helped when your mother could not. The ex-spouses had their arrangements clarified and formalized. Sandra would continue receiving $8,000 a month for life. Paul would receive a lump sum of $75,000 to close out any remaining claims. So far, the atmosphere had gone from tense to relieved. The money was being divided. It wasn't equal, but it was logical. Eleanor had been fair in her own way. Then Robert turned a page. He paused. It was a small pause, barely a second, but everyone noticed. There is, he said carefully, an additional bequest. Catherine frowned. Additional to what? Robert looked directly at Vincent. To Vincent Alexander Perry, he read. I leave the property located at 14 Riverside Lane, including the main house, both guest cottages, the workshop, and all surrounding land, totaling approximately 11.3 acres. Silence. Michael leaned forward. I'm sorry. What property? Robert continued. I also leave to Mr. Perry the full contents of my personal safe deposit box at Fidelity Union Bank, box number 7-4-2-9, including all documents, bonds, and items contained therein. In addition, I leave to Mr. Perry a trust account established in 2011, currently valued at $4.7 million, to be distributed in full to him within 90 days of my death, with all taxes paid by the estate. Catherine stood up. That's not possible. Robert kept reading. I leave to Mr. Perry my shares in Hartwell Legacy Holdings, totaling 18% of the company, with full voting rights. And I leave to him this letter to be read aloud now, in this room, by him or by my attorney on his behalf. Robert looked up. The room was frozen. Michael's face had gone red. 18% of Legacy Holdings. Hartwell Legacy Holdings was the family investment company Eleanor had created after selling the textile business. It managed properties, stocks, and ongoing ventures. 18% was worth, at minimum, another $12 million, and voting rights, and Vincent would have a say in every major family financial decision going forward. This is insane, Brandon said. He was standing now, too. She left the janitor more than she left most of us combined. Vincent sat completely still. His hands were still on the table. He was staring at Robert like he was waiting for someone to tell him this was a mistake. James spoke quietly. What property is Riverside Lane? Robert answered. It's the estate where Mrs. Hartwell grew up, her childhood home. She bought it back in 2004, after the textile sale. It's been maintained privately ever since. Catherine's voice was shaking. That house is worth at least $8 million. 8.4, Robert corrected, according to the most recent appraisal. Michael slammed his hand on the table. There's no possible way my mother left $25 million to a man who cleaned her floors. Robert's voice remained even. Your mother left approximately $24.7 million in combined assets. 2. Mr. Perry, yes, Jessica asked. She wasn't family, but no one told her to be quiet. Everyone wanted the same answer. Robert held up the letter. Mrs. Hartwell requested this be read now. He handed it to Vincent. Vincent stared at the envelope. His name was written on it in Eleanor's handwriting, thin and careful. He had seen her handwriting on notes left on the kitchen counter, instructions about repairs, thank you messages at Christmas. I can't, Vincent said quietly. You don't have to, Robert said. I can read it for you. Vincent nodded. Robert opened the envelope, unfolded 2 pages of stationery, and began to read. If stories like this pull you in, subscribing means you won't miss what happens next. To my family, and to Vincent, if you are hearing this, I am gone, and you are sitting in a room, together, confused and perhaps angry. I expected this. Some of you are wondering why I gave so much to a man you barely know. Some of you are already planning to contest this will. I want you to understand why I made these decisions, and I want you to hear it now, while you're all together, because you will need to hear it from me. Roberto said, then continued. Vincent Perry has worked for me for 26 years, but that is not why I left him what I did. I left it to him because he is my son. The room exploded. Michael was shouting. Catherine was standing, her chair knocked backward. Brandon was staring. Jessica had her hand over her mouth. James sat frozen, his eyes locked on Vincent. Robert raised his voice. Please, let me finish. It took a full minute for people to sit back down. Catherine was crying. Michael looked like he'd been struck. Robert continued reading. In 1958, I was 20 years old. I was engaged to a man my father approved of, a man from a good family, a man I did not love. That summer, I met a young man named David Perry. He worked at my father's factory. He was kind, intelligent, and we fell in love in the way you do when you are young and the world feels both impossible and endless. I became pregnant. My father found out. David was fired. I was sent away to have the baby in secret. I gave birth to a boy on March 14th, 1959. I named him Vincent Alexander. I held him for 4 hours. Then my father took him. He told me the child had been placed with a good family. He told me I would never see him again. He told me that if I ever tried to find him, he would destroy David Perry's life and the life of anyone who helped me. Catherine was shaking her head. No, this isn't real. Robert kept reading. I married the man my father chose. I had 3 children. I built a life, but I never forgot. Vincent. When my father died in 1982, I hired investigators. It took years. I found David Perry first. He had moved to North Carolina, married, had a family. He refused to speak to me. He said, I had made my choice, and I had no right to re-enter his life. I understood. Then, in 1993, I found Vincent. He was living in Richmond, working as a superintendent in an apartment complex. He had been raised by a couple named Perry, who had adopted him through a private arrangement my father had made. They were good people. They had loved him. I watched him from a distance for months. I did not approach him. I did not tell him who I was. I did not want to disrupt his life the way mine had been disrupted. James was staring at Vincent now, really looking at him for the first time. Robert continued. In 1993, I bought the building where Vincent worked. I created a position. I offered him a job as the head of maintenance at Grandview Estate. He accepted. He moved with his wife, Lorraine. They had no children. Lorraine died in 2002. Vincent stayed for 26 years. He worked in my house. He repaired my home. He kept my gardens. He was there every day, and I never told him. I justified it by telling myself I was protecting him. But the truth is, I was a coward. I wanted him close, but I could not face what I had done. I could not face the fact that I had given him away. Catherine's voice cracked. She lied to us. For our entire lives, she lied. Please, Robert said, there's more. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with a heart condition. My doctors told me I had time, but not much. I decided then that I would tell Vincent the truth. I wrote him letters. I threw them away. I rehearsed conversations I never had. And then, one afternoon last year, Vincent found me in the sunroom after I had fallen. I had gotten dizzy, collapsed. He helped me to my chair. He brought me water. He sat with me until I felt steady. And as he sat there, patient and kind, I saw my father in his eyes. I saw myself, and I realized that I had wasted 26 years. I had brought my son into my home and kept him at arm's length because I was afraid of the truth. I decided that day that I would tell him. But I wanted to do it right. I wanted to give him time to process it, to choose whether he wanted a relationship with me or not. I scheduled a meeting with Robert. I revised my will. I planned to tell Vincent in January, privately, before I told any of you, but I ran out of time. Vincent's hands were shaking now. His head was down. He wasn't crying, but his breathing had changed. Robert's voice was softer now. Vincent, if you are hearing this, it means I died before I could tell you myself. Yeah, I'm so sorry. You deserve to hear this from me, in person, with the chance to ask questions, to be angry, to reject me if you chose. Instead, you are hearing it in a room full of strangers who are also your family, and I have put you in an impossible position. I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not expect you to accept what I have left you, but I want you to know that every day you were in my house, I was grateful. Every conversation we had, every time you fixed a door or planted a tree or simply said good morning, I felt like I had been given a gift I did not deserve. You are my son. I gave you away once. I will not do it again, even in death. The house on Riverside Lane is where I grew up. It is where I was happiest, before my life became something I did not choose. I want you to have it. I want you to have the means to live without fear. And I want you to know that I loved you. I have always loved you. Robert set the letter down. No one moved. Vincent was staring at the table. His shoulders were tight. His jaw was clenched. Michael broke the silence. His voice was cold. This is a fabrication. Robert looked at him. Excuse me, my mother was not in her right mind in her final years. This is clearly a delusion or a manipulation. Or there's a DNA test, Robert interrupted. Michael stopped. Robert opened a folder. Mrs. Hartwell anticipated challenges. In 2017, she asked Mr. Perry to participate in a routine health screening as part of the estate's employee wellness program. She collected a sample. She had it tested against her own. The results are here. I have 3 independent lab reports. Vincent Perry is Eleanor Hartwell's biological son. There was no question. Catherine stood up again, slower this time. You're telling me we have a brother we never knew about? Half-brother, Robert clarified, though it felt like a meaningless distinction now. James finally spoke. Did you know? He was looking at Vincent. Vincent shook his head. His voice came out rough. No. Did you suspect? No. She never said anything. Never hinted. No. Vincent looked up. His eyes were wet, but he wasn't crying. She was kind to me. She paid me well. She asked about my life, but she never. I thought she was just a good employer. Brandon laughed bitterly. A good employer who left you $25 million? I didn't ask for it. Vincent said quietly. Doesn't matter, Michael said. You can't have it. Robert sighed. Mr. Hartwell, the will is legally sound. It's been reviewed by multiple attorneys. Your mother was of sound mind when she drafted it. The DNA evidence is conclusive. You can contest it, but you will lose, and it will cost you a significant portion of your own inheritance and legal fees. Then we'll contest it anyway, Catherine said. This is not what Mother wanted. She was confused. She was guilty about something that happened 60 years ago, and this man took advantage of. I didn't know, Vincent said again, louder this time. He stood, I didn't know who she was. I didn't know any of this Primera Comité work. Primera did my job. I went home. That's all. Then give it back, Michael said. If you didn't ask for it, you don't need it. Give it back to the family. Vincent looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked at Robert. Can I do that? Robert hesitated. Legally, yes. You could refuse the inheritance. It would be redistributed according to the contingency clauses in the will, which were divided among Mrs. Hartwell's 3 other children. Then I'll... James stood. He was looking at Vincent. Don't give it back. Michael turned on him. Are you serious? She wanted him to have it, James said. She made that very clear. She was guilty, Catherine snapped. Guilt makes people do irrational things. Maybe, James said. Or maybe she knew exactly what she was doing. He looked around the room. How many times did any of us visit her in the last 5 years? I saw her maybe 3 times a year. You two came even less. We called on holidays. We sent cards. We showed up when we needed money or when there was a gala she was funding. But who was there every day? Who actually took care of her? He was paid to be there, Michael said. So were the nurses, James said. So was the cook. But Mom didn't leave them $25 million. She left it to him. Maybe she had a reason. Vincent sat back down. He looked exhausted. Robert cleared his throat. There are additional documents, financial records, property deeds, account numbers. These will need to be reviewed individually. I suggest we take a break. No, Michael said. I want to see the DNA test. Robert slid the folder across the table. Michael opened it. He read the first page. Then the second. His face went pale. He slid it to Catherine. She read it, then covered her mouth. The numbers were clear. Probability of paternity, 99.97%, Jessica whispered. Oh my God. One of the grandchildren, Thomas, Catherine's son, said what everyone was thinking. So, Grandma had a secret son and hired him as the janitor. Don't call him that, James said quietly. What should I call him? Thomas asked Uncle Vincent. The absurdity of it hung in the air. Vincent stood again. I need to leave. Mr. Perry, Robert said gently. There are documents you need to sign, accounts that need your eye. Can't do this right now. Vincent's voice was shaken. I can't sit here and I need air. He walked to the door. No one stopped him. He left. The room sat in silence for nearly a minute. Then Catherine said, her voice barely above a whisper, What do we do? Robert began gathering papers. You go home. You process this. You speak to your own attorneys if you wish, but understand that this will is going to stand. Mrs. Hartwell made sure of it. Michael shook his head. This will destroy the family. The family was already fractured, James said. We just didn't know it. Over the next 3 weeks, the Hartwell family tried to break Eleanor's will. Michael hired a team of attorneys from a firm in New York that specialized in estate litigation. They argued undue influence. They argued diminished capacity. They argued that Eleanor's guilt had clouded her judgment and that Vincent, whether he knew it or not, had been in a position of psychological power over an elderly, isolated woman. The arguments fell apart quickly. Eleanor's medical records showed no signs of cognitive decline. Her personal correspondence, reviewed by the court, demonstrated clear, rational thinking up until days before her death, and multiple witnesses, including her personal physician, her financial advisor, and Robert Brennan himself, testified that Eleanor had discussed her decision to acknowledge Vincent at length, that she had understood the implications, and that she had been firm in her choice. The DNA evidence was ironclad. The court dismissed the challenge within 2 weeks. Catherine tried a different approach. She reached out to Vincent directly. She called the number Robert had provided. Vincent answered on the 4th ring. This is Catherine Hartwell Drummond, she said. I think we should talk. They met at a coffee shop in Richmond, neutral ground. Catherine came alone. Vincent came alone. They sat across from each other in a booth near the window. Catherine ordered tea she didn't drink. Vincent ordered black coffee. "I don't know how to start this conversation," Catherine admitted. "Neither do I," Vincent said. They sat in silence for a moment. "Did you love her?" Catherine asked. Vincent looked surprised. "Your mother?" "Yes." He thought about it. "I respected her. I liked working for her. She was fair. She treated me like I mattered. I didn't love her the way you love a parent, if that's what you're asking. I didn't know she was my parent." Catherine's eyes filled. "I keep thinking about all the times you were in the house and I walked past you. All the times I barely looked at you. I was cruel, wasn't I? You didn't know. That doesn't make it better." She wiped her eyes. "I treated you like you were invisible. We all did." Vincent didn't argue. "My mother gave you away," Catherine said. "And then she brought you back and didn't tell you. I don't know if that's love or cruelty. Maybe both," Vincent said. Catherine nodded. She was quiet for a long time. Tensa said, "You going to keep it? The inheritance?" "I don't know. It's yours legally. No one can take it from you now." "I know." "So what's stopping you?" Vince's eye looked out the window. "It feels like I'm stealing from you. From your brothers, from her real family." "You are her real family," Catherine said. The words hurt her to say, but she said them anyway. "You're her son. You have just as much right to that money as we do. Maybe more. You were the one she abandoned." "She didn't abandon me," Vincent said. "Her father took me. She let him." Vincent didn't respond. Catherine leaned forward. "I'm not going to lie to you. Part of me hates this. Part of me wishes you would just disappear and we could go back to pretending our family was normal. But another part of me..." She stopped. "Another part of me thinks maybe my mother did the only honest thing she ever did when she wrote that will." "What do you mean? I mean, we didn't take care of her." "Not really. We took her money. We showed up when it benefited us, but we didn't see her. You did. You were there. You earned it." Vincent shook his head. "I was just doing my job." "No," Catherine said. "You were being a son. You just didn't know it." They talked for another hour. It wasn't easy. There were long pauses, painful admissions, questions neither of them could answer. But by the end, something had shifted. They weren't friends. They weren't even quite family yet, but they weren't strangers anymore either. James reached out next. He sent Vincent a letter, handwritten, 8 pages long. In it, he apologized for the family's reaction. He explained that he had always felt like an outsider in the Hartwell family, that he had never quite fit the mold his mother and siblings expected. He wrote that, learning about Vincent had reframed his entire childhood. All the moments when Eleanor had seemed distant or sad. All the times she had stared out windows or left rooms abruptly when certain songs played. He ended the letter with an invitation. He asked Vincent to come to Portland, to visit the bookstore, to talk without lawyers or legal documents, or the weight of money hanging over them. Vincent went. They spent a weekend together. They didn't talk about the inheritance much. Instead, they talked about Eleanor. James shared stories Vincent had never heard. Vincent shared small moments, fragments of conversations, things Eleanor had said while he repaired a fence or replaced a window. "She asked me once if I was happy," Vincent said. They were sitting in the back of the bookstore, surrounded by stacks of unsold novels. It was a strange question. She'd never asked me anything that personal before. I told her I was content. She looked at me for a long time and then she said, "Content is not the same as happy." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She never brought it up again. James smiled sadly. That sounds like her. She was always looking for something she couldn't name. Maybe she was looking for me, Vincent said quietly. Maybe, James agreed. Michael never reached out. He refused to speak to Vincent. refused to acknowledge him as family, and instructed his children to do the same. In his mind, Vincent was an interloper, a stranger who had been elevated by a woman who had lost her grip on reality in her final years. But privately, late at night, Michael found himself going through old photographs. There was one picture in particular, taken in 1959, a few months before Eleanor's wedding. She was standing in a garden, smiling, but her eyes looked wrong. Hollow, he had never noticed it before. He put the photo away and didn't look at it again. Bilate April. The estate had been settled. Vincent received the property on Riverside Lane. He received the trust account, the shares in Hartwell Legacy Holdings, and the contents of the safe deposit box, which turned out to include bonds worth another $900,000, several pieces of jewelry that had belonged to Eleanor's mother, and a series of letters Eleanor had written to him over the years but never sent. He read the letters alone, in the house on Riverside Lane, sitting in the same sunroom where Eleanor had spent her childhood. In one letter, written in 2003, she described the day she sold the textile company and realized she finally had the resources to find him, to bring him close, to give him a life without struggle. She wrote, "I tell myself this is enough, that seeing you every day, even from a distance, even without you knowing, is a kind of grace I do not deserve. But it is not enough. It will never be enough. And I am too much of a coward to risk losing even this." In another letter, written in 2016, she described watching him work in the garden and realizing how much he looked like her father. She wrote, "You have his hands, his way of moving. I hated my father for most of my life, but when I see you, I remember that he was also capable of moments of tenderness. You carry that in you. You carry the good parts of him that I forgot existed." The final letter was dated January 22nd, 2019, 6 days before she died. It was short. "Vincent, I am running out of time. I was supposed to tell you today. I had it planned. I was going to ask you to sit with me in the sunroom, and I was going to say the words I have been too afraid to say for 26 years. But when you came into the room this morning and asked if I needed anything, I lost my courage. You smiled at me. You called me Mrs. Hartwell, and I could not bear to take that smile away, so I will write it instead, and hope that someday you will read this and understand. You are my son. I have loved you from the moment I held you. I have loved you every day since, and I am so sorry that I was not brave enough to tell you while I still could." Vincent set the letter down and cried for the first time since the reading. In June, Vincent made a decision. He kept the house on Riverside Lane. He moved in. He hired a small staff to help maintain it, including a young woman named Maria, who reminded him of his late wife. But he did something unexpected with the money. He contacted Robert Brennan and set up a foundation. He called it the Lorraine Perry Foundation, after his wife. Its mission was to provide housing assistance and job training to people who had aged out of the foster care system, people who, like him, had been adopted or displaced and were trying to build lives without the support systems most people took for granted. He funded it with $2 million from the trust. He also reached out to Catherine and James with a proposal. He wanted to sell his shares in Hartwell Legacy Holdings back to the family at a fair price, below market value. He didn't want to be part of the business decisions. He didn't want the leverage or the power. He just wanted the family to have control of what Eleanor had built. Catherine almost cried when he made the offer. James accepted immediately. Michael still refused to speak to him, but he signed the papers through his attorney. Vincent used the money from the sale to expand the foundation and to set up trust funds for Eleanor's grandchildren, the ones who had sat in that conference room, looking confused and uncomfortable. He didn't ask for their gratitude. He didn't ask for anything. By August, Vincent had settled into a routine. He lived in the house on Riverside Lane. He worked in the gardens, the same way he had worked in Eleanor's gardens. He read books from the library Eleanor had left to James, who sent him boxes every few weeks. He cooked quiet meals. He took long walks on the property. He also started attending family gatherings, not Michael's. Michael made it clear he was not welcome. But Catherine invited him to Thanksgiving. James invited him to his birthday dinner in September. The grandchildren especially Emily and Thomas, started reaching out, asking questions, trying to understand the shape of this family that had suddenly changed. It wasn't easy. There were awkward silences. There were moments when someone would start to say, "Mom," and then stop. Realizing Vincent had a claim to that word too. There were old wounds that didn't heal just because DNA said they were related, but slowly, something began to form. Not the family Eleanor had raised, and not the family Vincent had imagined when he first sat down in that conference room. Something new, something fragile. In October, Vincent visited Eleanor's grave for the first time. It was a quiet cemetery outside the city. Old trees, stone markers, worn smooth by weather. Eleanor was buried next to her husband, the man she had married because her father told her to. There was space next to her, reserved, that had been meant for one of her children. Vincent stood there for a long time. He didn't know what to say. He had spent months thinking about what he would say when he finally came here. But now that he was standing in front of the stone, the words felt inadequate. Finally, he said, simply, "I forgive you." He didn't know if it was true yet, but he thought maybe, someday, it would be. As he turned to leave, he noticed something. There was a bench near the grave, new, with a small plaque. He walked over and read it. In memory of Eleanor Hartwell, who spent her life searching for the courage to tell the truth. Placed here by her son. Vincent Perry, he hadn't placed it. He didn't know who had. Later, he found out it was James. By December, the dust had settled. The inheritance had been distributed. The legal battles were over. The family had fractured and reformed into something unrecognizable from what it had been a year earlier. Vincent had given away, or redistributed most of the money. He kept the house, a small trust for himself, and enough to live comfortably, but not extravagantly. He didn't need Eleanor's wealth. He had never needed it. What he needed, he realized, was to understand why she had done what she did. And in the end, after reading all the letters, after talking to Robert and Catherine and James, after walking through the house where she had grown up and imagining her as a 20-year-old girl in love with a man she wasn't allowed to keep, he thought he understood. Eleanor Hartwell had made a choice at 20 that defined the rest of her life. She had given away her son to protect her future, her family's reputation, and the life her father had planned for her. And she had spent the next 60 years trying to undo that choice in the only way she knew how. She couldn't bring back the years. She couldn't erase the adoption or the silence or the distance, but she could give Vincent something that no one could take away. Security. A home. A place in the family that had rejected him before he was even born. It wasn't enough. It could never be enough. But it was something, and maybe, Vincent thought, that was the point. Maybe Eleanor had known that no amount of money or property could make up for what she had done. But she had given it anyway, because doing nothing would have been worse. In January 2020, exactly 1 year after Eleanor's death, Vincent hosted a small gathering at Riverside Lane. He invited Catherine, James, and a few of the grandchildren. He didn't invite Michael. No better. They sat in the sunroom. The same sunroom where Eleanor had read books, and looked out at the gardens, and thought about the son she had given away. Vincent served coffee and pastries he had made himself. They talked about small things at first, the weather, the foundation. James's bookstore. Then Catherine asked the question they had all been avoiding. Do you think she loved us, her other children? Vincent thought about it. Yes, he said, I think she did. I think she loved you. The way she was able to, I don't think she was good at it. I don't think she knew how, but I think she tried. Did she love you more? Thomas asked. He was Catherine's youngest, 23, studying philosophy in graduate school. He had a habit of asking the questions everyone else was thinking. Vincent smiled sadly. I don't think it works like that. I think she loved me differently. I think she carried guilt about me that she didn't carry about you. Guilt isn't the same as love, but it can look like it sometimes. James nodded. She used to tell me that the hardest part of being a mother was knowing you failed and not being able to fix it. She told you that. Catherine asked. Once. I was maybe 16. I'd screwed up something. I don't even remember what. She sat with me and she said that everyone fails the people they love. And the real question is whether you can live with it or whether it destroys you. He paused. I think it almost destroyed her. They sat in silence. Then Emily, Michael's daughter, spoke. She was 28, a lawyer like her father, but softer. I don't think my dad is ever going to forgive you. Or forgive her. I just want you to know that. Vincent nodded. I know. I'm sorry, Emily said. Don't be. He's allowed to feel how he feels. Even if it's wrong. Even then. They stayed until evening. They looked through old photographs Vincent had found in the attic. Pictures of Eleanor as a young woman. Pictures of the house in its early years. They told stories. They laughed. They cried. A little. And when they left, Vincent stood on the porch and watched them drive away. And for the first time in his life, he felt like he belonged to something bigger than himself. Not a family, exactly. Not yet, but the beginning of one. 3 months later, in March 2020, Vincent received a letter. It was from Michael. He opened it carefully, unsure what to expect. The letter was short, typed, formal. Mr. Perry, I will never accept you as my brother. I will never forgive my mother for what she did. But my daughter has asked me to stop fighting this, and I respect her enough to try. You have done more with the inheritance than I expected. The foundation is a good thing. I wanted you to know that I acknowledge that. Even if I acknowledge nothing else, do not contact me. Do not expect a relationship, but I wanted you to know that I no longer oppose your place in the family records. Michael Hartwell. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't acceptance, but it was something. Vincent folded the letter and put it in a drawer with Eleanor's letters. He thought about responding. He decided not to. Some silences were better left alone. By the summer of 2020, the world had changed in ways no one had anticipated. The pandemic had arrived. People were isolated, afraid, grieving losses they hadn't prepared for. Vincent spent the lockdown alone in the house on Riverside Lane. He read, he gardened, he video called with Catherine and James and the grandchildren, and he thought a lot about Eleanor. He thought about the fact that she had died just weeks before the world shut down, before families were forced to reckon with distance and separation and all the words they hadn't said. He wondered if she would have told him the truth, if she had known what was coming, if she would have taken the risk. Meddekel sat him down and said the words she had been too afraid to say. He would never know. But in the quiet of the house, surrounded by her books and her furniture and the life she had built and then left behind, he felt something he hadn't expected. Gratitude. Not for the money, though it had changed his life. Not for the house, though it was beautiful, but for the fact that Eleanor had tried. She had failed in so many ways. She had waited too long, hidden too much, hurt people she loved because she was afraid. But in the end, she had tried to make it right, and maybe that was all anyone could do. Try, fail, try again. Leave behind something better than silence. In September 2021, Vincent attended his first official family event. It was a memorial service for Eleanor, delayed by the pandemic, held at the estate where she had lived for 52 years. The new owners, a tech executive and his wife, had graciously allowed the family to use the grounds for the afternoon. Michael was there. He stood on the opposite side of the gathering. He didn't look at Vincent, but Catherine stood next to Vincent. James stood on his other side. The grandchildren gave speeches. Emily talked about Eleanor's strength. Thomas talked about her complexity. One of James's daughters read a poem, and then, unexpectedly, Vincent was asked to speak. He hadn't prepared anything. He stood at the front of the gathering, 66 years old, wearing a suit James had helped him pick out, and looked at the faces of people who were, by blood and by law, his family. He said, I didn't know Eleanor Hartwell the way you did. I didn't grow up calling her mom. I didn't sit at a table or fight with her or make her proud or disappoint her the way children do. But I knew her in a different way. I knew her as someone who was kind when she didn't have to be, who paid attention to the small things, who remembered that I liked my coffee black and that my wife had been buried on a Tuesday in May and that I didn't like working in the rain. C'est salut, me. And I think, looking back, that maybe she saw me because she understood what it was like to be invisible. To be in a room full of people and feel like no one really knew who you were. I can't forgive her for giving me away. I don't know if I ever will. But I can forgive her for not knowing how to fix it, and I can be grateful that she tried. But in the end, she chose honesty, even when it was too late, even when it hurt. I think that took more courage than any of us know. He stepped down. No one clapped. It wasn't that kind of speech, but Catherine reached out and took his hand, and she held it for the rest of the service. And Michael, across the gathering, looked away. But he didn't leave. The inheritance meeting on March 12, 2019 lasted 37 minutes, but its consequences lasted much longer. By the end, the Hartwell family had been dismantled and rebuilt. Relationships had been destroyed. New ones had been formed. Money had been distributed, contested, and redistributed. And a man who had spent 26 years cleaning floors and repairing fences had become the center of a story he never asked to be part of. Vincent Perry kept the house on Riverside Lane. He kept Eleanor's letters. He kept the memory of sitting in that conference room and hearing his name read aloud in a context he didn't understand, surrounded by people who looked at him like he had stolen something that was never his to take. He also kept trying to understand Eleanor, trying to build relationships with siblings who didn't know he existed, trying to honor a woman who had loved him from a distance, and then, in the only way she knew how, tried to close that distance before it was too late. It wasn't a happy ending. Eleanor was still gone. Vincent still grew up without a mother. The family was still fractured, some parts beyond repair, but it was an ending that had truth in it. And sometimes, Vincent thought that was enough. On quiet mornings, he would walk through the gardens at Riverside Lane, the same gardens Eleanor had walked through as a child, and he would think about all the ways people fail each other and all the ways they try, impossibly, to make it right. He would think about inheritance, not just the money and property and legal documents, but the other kind, the inheritance of silence, of secrets, of choices made in fear that echo across generations. And he would think about the fact that Eleanor Hartwell had spent 60 years carrying a secret, and in the end, she had chosen to let it out. Even though it destroyed the image of the family she had built, even though it hurt people she loved, even though it was too late to change the past, she had chosen truth. And that truth had given Vincent something he didn't know he needed. Not wealth, not status, but a story. Story. A place in the world that made sense of all the years he had spent feeling like he was on the outside of something he couldn't name. In the end, that was what Eleanor had left him. Not just money, but an answer to a question he didn't know he'd been asking his entire life. Who am I? Where do I come from? Why do I feel the way I feel? And in answering those questions, Eleanor had given Vincent the most valuable inheritance of all. The truth. Painful, complicated, too late, but true. And in a world built on silence and appearances and secrets, kept to protect reputations, truth was the rarest gift anyone could give. Vincent understood that now. He understood why Eleanor had written the will the way she had, why she had forced the family to sit in that room together and hear her confession, why she had put Vincent at the center, even though it would have been easier to leave him a quiet check and let him fade back into invisibility. She hadn't wanted easy, she had wanted real. And real was what Vincent had now. A house full of ghosts, a family that didn't know what to do with him, a foundation named after a woman who had loved him when no one else did, and a pile of letters from a mother he never got to call by that name. It wasn't the inheritance anyone expected, but it was the one that mattered. And as Vincent stood in the sunroom on a quiet morning in late autumn, looking out at the gardens turning gold and red, he thought about Eleanor sitting in this same spot 60 years ago, young and pregnant and terrified, making a choice he would regret for the rest of her life. He thought about her bringing him back, decades later, close enough to see but not close enough to touch, and he thought about the moment she must have decided to write the will, to risk everything, to burn down the careful illusion she had built and leave behind the truth instead. It must have terrified her, but she had done it anyway, and for that, Vincent thought he could forgive her. Not for giving him away, but for bringing him home. Even if it was too late, even if it changed nothing and everything at the same time, she had brought him home. And that, in the end, was all anyone could ask for. To be seen, to be claimed, to belong. Vincent Perry belonged now to a house, to a history, to a family that was still learning what his name meant, and to a woman who had loved him in the only way she knew how, from a distance. In silence, and then, finally, in the wheel that changed everything. The inheritance meeting lasted 37 minutes, but the inheritance itself would last the rest of Vincent's life. Not the money. Truth, and the choice every single day to decide what to do with it.